Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm Brittany, the mom and maker behind Ginger Patch Designs, and today we are sewing handmade bowl cozy. I know these have been around for a long time, but I honestly use mine all the time in the winter when I'm eating soup and chili or just anything hot, and now my daughter uses them as well. If you're a beginner sewer and think this might be too hard for you, I'm gonna hold your hand along the way and show you some tips and troubleshooting things to help you get through it. This is also part of a sewing gifts playlist on my channel, so make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss any other crafty gift idea. For this project, you're going to need 2 pieces of fabric, 2 pieces of batting, quilt clips or pins, pencil, ruler, and your iron. So we're going to be cutting 10.5 by 10.5 pieces of fabric. Now, if you're using a scrap like I am, you're going to want to make sure you press it out. I have folded this one over the best that I can, but it is not straight. So what I mean by square it up is even up all of the edges so that it's nice and even. Now you can make these the same fabric on both sides, or if you have doubled over fabric, you've just made enough for 2 if you're gonna put a matching fabric on the other side, like I am. I chose this green because I wanted to pull out the green in the leaves on this really pretty rose floral. As handy as an ironing board is and an extra workspace, I also love this wool mat because when you're at the cutting table a lot and you just need quick presses, it is very handy, and then I just slide it out of the way. So I'm going to cut 10.5 by 10.5 again with my matching fabric. If you're new to sewing, make sure that you always cut off, this is called the selvage on the bottom. It's just from where the fabric is printed and it's yucky and we don't want to use that. So make sure you cut that off before making your actual measurements. Now for your batting, you're not going to cut the same measurements as your fabric. You want to cut 1/2 inch less than whatever your fabric pieces are. If you're making bigger cozies and you're cutting like 12.5 inch, or you're cutting smaller cozies at like 8.5 inch, whatever it is, you want to cut off 1/2 inch. So I'm going to cut my batting at 10 inches, and you're going to want 2 pieces. Once you have all your pieces cut out, you're going to lay your batting down flat just like this. If there's any strings or stray anything on them, just go ahead and nip those off. And this is an optional step. It's called basting adhesive. You do not need this for such a small piece, but if you're ever quilting and you're worried about the fabric shifting, this is a really great tool to have in your sewing room. I'll make sure to link it down in the description, and you don't need much. It's just a quick little something. It's basically holds your fabric to the piece that you want it to stay on. And remember that our fabric is 1/2 inch larger than our batting, so make sure you somewhat center it up the best that you can there and just smooth it out. If you are using the basting spray, just know that like you can just peel it off and put it back. It's not like super glue. And now we take it to the machine. So we're going to be sewing an X across our piece, so from point to point. So now you need your pencil and your ruler and your quilt clips if you have them. If you don't have quilt clips, you can use pens, but you do need something to secure the side. So you're gonna fold your piece in half. It really doesn't matter which side because we're gonna do both sides and line them up so they're nice and even. And I like to put 3 on each side. So lay your piece like this with your quilt clips or your pins on the left, and we're gonna make our darts on these corners right here. So on this side, you're gonna measure about 1 inch, and then on this side, you're gonna measure 2 inches down and mark it. And if you want to line up those 2 marks and just make a line, you don't have to, but I like to do it just as a double check. And you're going to repeat the process on the other side. So one more time, we made a 1-inch mark here. Don't mind my cat, she is not attention deprived and she's not supposed to be in here. And then on this side, we made a 2-inch mark and then we just connected those lines. And you're gonna repeat the process for the other one. So all of the lines that you made for your darts, we're gonna stitch those and make sure you back stitch when you start to secure those stitches in place. Now you're just gonna snip those off. Be careful not to snip your stitches and then unfold them. So we're making these darts, the part that actually makes it kind of create the space for the bowl in the cozy, these darts right here. And we're gonna open them up and we're gonna repeat the process on the other side. But since we've got these darts here, you wanna make sure you line those up. And I put one right there. Now, if like me, you, for some reason, through shifting when you were quilting the pieces, you have a little, it's uneven right here. As long as these are even and lined up, that's what matters first. This unevenness will not be noticed on the final product. So just go ahead and clip it and I'll show you what to do when we get to that part. And again, we're gonna make our 1-inch mark here, our 2-inch mark here, and then draw our line. Okay, and you're gonna take these back to your machine and sew along those lines one more time. Okay, so now if you open them up, it's starting to look more like our actual bowl cozy. So we're gonna open up the pieces and we're gonna carefully line up all of our darts. So it might feel a little awkward. The most important thing is to line up the darts. Now you'll have seams on the back side of your darts, and because these seams are so small, personally what I like to do on these is to just fold them over. You can open them up if you want to. I personally, it's just easier because they're so small to fold them over. So folding them over just means like you turn one way and you turn the other one the other way. This one is turned this way and this one is turned that way. I don't know why I can't just say right and left, I'm sorry. So line up all your darts before you worry about your corners. So when we go to our machine, we are gonna sew all the way around the edge, but we need to leave a hole so we can turn it right side out. So I like to start my hole like in between a dart and a corner. So we're gonna leave a hole about like right here. So I like to start my stitching before I get to a dart, and then I'll go all the way around and I will end after this corner. So I'll have a little bit of stitching before or after the corner and a little bit of stitching before the dart. I accidentally started sewing without turning on the camera, but I'm gonna go back through the motions with you. So we are gonna, here's the dart and we're gonna start sewing right here before it. So I need to take this clip off to get it under my presser foot, but I don't want my seams that I have going in opposite directions to come up. So I'm just gonna hold my finger here while I pick it up, and then you can put it under your presser foot. We are going to be sewing at 1/4 of an inch inseam, and if it's not marked on your machine, I like to use the edge of my presser foot. On my other machine, I had a J foot, which was much wider, and I would literally just use the edge of my presser foot as a guide when I'm sewing. Another thing of note when you're sewing around these, because they're so awkward, is there is a slight dip here. And so when you're sewing down the side, there's going to be a slight shift when you get across the dart. And so you want to make sure that you're sewing evenly along these edges. See, I just got to a dart And now I'm going to shift just a little bit. And because we have these darts in here, the fabric itself, the 2 layers, will bunch a little bit. And so this is not a speed sewing thing. I'm constantly kind of just feeling and smoothing out to make sure the layers are not bunched. And you can feel it when you're sewing for the most part if you need to do some shifting. So I just got to the end of the corner where I'm about to stop. And so I'm gonna go just a few more stitches and then I'm gonna back stitch twice and cut it off. Now before we turn it right side out, we wanna make sure our corners are going to poke out very nicely. And so we're gonna snip off the ends just like that. And then I like to add 2 little notches on either side of the corners. It's just gonna allow that fabric to poke out nicely the way we want it to. Okay, then find that hole and gently pull it out. Be careful, even though you did some back stitching, just be careful that you don't rip those stitches. And if you do, it's okay, we can fix it. So you can use the blunt end of a pencil, or I even like, my favorite poking tool is the end of a dowel rod because it's like really long and skinny. But this is so small, I just put my fingers in there and I poke out the corners just like this. And if you got some stray stringies, pull those off or cut those off. Now you should notice that your darts are lined up nicely on each side. We are almost done. So now you're going to take your piece to your ironing board or your ironing mat like I have here, and we're gonna press down all of these edges. And it takes a little bit of finagling. And you kind of have to work with it because of those darts. I'm just in love with this fabric. It is so pretty. I wish I had got some more than this. This is actually vintage fabric that was in the vintage fabric haul back in the spring, and it was a very small piece, and I wish there was more of it because it's so. Now when it comes to our hole, it might already kind of naturally be going in on itself, but if it's not, you're just gonna fold in both sides, and you wanna make sure that, like, if it's folded like just that much, you might not catch all of that. So make sure you fold it in enough that it's even with the rest of your piece and you're actually gonna catch all of those seams. And even though it's ironed, I love to pin. I'm a clipper, so I just love to clip that down just in case. Now, if for some reason your piece is not laying super flat, even after ironing, you can manually like go through and clip it like this, just to kind of help you as a guide when you're doing your top stitching, but you don't have to. So our last step is to top stitch all the way around. Now, whenever you first start stitching on a project, you can often get what we call it a bird's nest on the bottom where the beginning threads kind of bunch up, and it is the worst. We hate it. So what I like to do is just make sure that my top thread is underneath my presser foot, number one, and I pull it out about like that. And then when I'm starting on, it doesn't really matter where you start on here, but I like to start close to a dart because when you're holding the piece, like these outer corners are what's going to be more noticeable. And so I'm going to start down here on one of the darts, 1/4 of an inch, and then I go ahead and depress the needle before I actually start sewing, and that seems to help with the bird's nest situation. And again, when you're going around, this is essentially a dip. Just make sure you're shifting your fabric so that your top stitching is even. another troubleshooting note, I don't have this problem on this machine, but on a previous machine that I used to sew on, when I would get to the very corners like that, sometimes the feed dogs just didn't want to catch it, and so I would just kind of not pull, but guide it with my thumb to kind of get the feed dogs to catch it so I could get past that corner. Now before I get all the way back to my starting place, to avoid creating a bird's nest possibly, I like to go ahead and snip off my starting thread, and there's just the teensiest little tail back here. Again, this is just a personal preference. I have often created bird's nest without actually starting with a bird's nest, so now I have a habit of doing that. And then I like to slow down and make sure I'm lining up my ending stitching with my beginning stitching so it's nice and even. Back stitch and snip. I also like to always give a double check to the seam, the hole that I sewed up, and just make sure that I did catch all of those stitches. And on the other side, like, you can't even tell that that's where the hole is, and that is the goal, friends. I absolutely love that I chose this fabric for this tutorial. It's just so pretty with the green. Friends, don't forget that this is part of a playlist on my channel where you can find other handmade sewing gift ideas as well. I'm thinking I might need to come up with like a small, medium, and a large. Let me know down in the comments what you think. Friends, I had so much fun sewing with you today. Make sure you give this video a like and subscribe so you don't miss future additions to this playlist, and I will see you later. Bye.